بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, last week we started hadith number 1, but we only took a few introductory points regarding hadith number 1. So therefore there's no need to listen to the memorization again because the students have already recited it. But as for some of the points that we took, quickly just revise some of those points. Inshallah. So we took the introduction of Imam an-Nawawi rahimahullah. Then after that, hadith number 1, Kabir. Who is it narrated by? Which books?
Hadith number 1.
Hadith number 1.
Bukhari and Muslim.
Bukhari and Muslim. Riyadh, which hadith number in Bukhari?
1.
The first one. It's easy. I'm not going to normally ask you hadith numbers, but it's the first one, so that's easy. Is it the exact wording of the first hadith? It slightly differs. Qasim, I'll keep this an open question. Anyone memorize the chain? Go on, Tanzil.
حدثنا الحميدي عبد الله بن الزبير قال حدثنا سفيان بن عيينة قال حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري قال أخبرني محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي أنه سمع علقمة ابن وقاص الليثي يقول سمعت عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه على المنبر قال سمعت رسول الله.
And then the rest of the hadith. MashaAllah, ahsant. Last week the worksheets that you got, there was a slight mistake in the chain, so just change it. Okay, I did update it and I sent it in the group, but the chain, the Prophet ﷺ, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Alqamah, then you guys had Yahya, right? In between there should be another person. In between there, the name which is missing, Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. Add that in. Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. So after Alqamah, there should be another name which is Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. And then Yahya ibn Sa'id. Okay. Qasim, what is Khabar Ahad?
Hadith that are non-mutawatir.
Okay. Then if you say that, you have to define mutawatir. Must be transmitted. So Khabar Ahad, they normally translate it as singular narrations or something like that. No. Okay. Adam, are these Khabar Ahad, are they proofs? So if there's a hadith, only one companion narrated it, one tabi'i narrated it, and so on.
One of the examples I gave last week was that when people went out to fight, a small group stayed behind.
Because one of the adillah is, the Prophet when he commanded the people to fight, he said that a group of people should remain behind to learn the religion, to teach it to the people, and that shows that it's not a great number. Next to you? Is your first lesson? Okay. Give me another proof showing that Khabar Ahad is a dalil. You don't know? Tanzil? Sorry? A proof that Khabar Ahad are proofs. Don't know.
Wasn't a story about Sahaba going to a different.
Very good. When the Prophet ﷺ would send Sahaba to other countries, he would send them individuals, Mu'adh radiallahu anhu to one side of Yemen, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu to the other side of Yemen, and to teach the whole religion, not just to narrate one hadith, but to teach the whole religion. If we had to have a great number of people, then the Prophet would have sent a great number of people. And we also mentioned the Prophet himself is a singular person, likewise other prophets and messengers, and so on. Okay. The meaning of this hadith is specific to just this hadith, or can we find it in other places?
There's more.
The general meaning of the hadith. Yes, while it's widespread in the Quran and Sunnah. There's many ahadith, many ayat that talk about the meaning of this hadith. It might not be the exact same wording, But the general meaning is that every action needs to have an intention and it needs to be done sincerely for Allah for it to be accepted and so on. The hadith and ayat are many. Right? Give me one statement regarding the status of this hadith.
Is it when Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever among you hears from me and
That's a virtue of hadith generally. I'm talking about this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Give me one statement of the scholars showing the importance of this hadith.
Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, he said, if I authored a book,
I'm good. Abdurrahman Mahdi said if I was to order a book or author a book, I'd put this hadith in the beginning of every single chapter. You know more?
this hadith, 1/3 of his knowledge, and into 70 chapters.
Good. Imam Shafi'i said this hadith is a third of knowledge and enters into 70 chapters of fiqh. Right. Tawheed, why was this hadith narrated?
you mentioned it's
Regarding who?
regarding marriage, but you mentioned that it wasn't. It's the stories are authentic, but don't know if it's actually real.
Okay. What did you say?
Just agree with him that you mentioned the story, but
What's the story?
that someone went for marriage or something, but it wasn't linked to this hadith.
Good. So there's a person, he's known as Muhajir Qais. Muhajir, the one who did hijrah. Qais was the woman that he traveled for. So he migrated, but not for the same reason that the Muslims migrated. He migrated for marriage. We said this hadith, many ulama have rejected it. However, the story. However, as Ibn Hajar and others have mentioned, that when they reject it, they're not rejecting the authenticity of the story itself. The story took place. But what they are rejecting is the link between the story and this hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ did not say this hadith due to that story, even though there's a link in terms of the meaning. There are two separate instances. Good. Okay, then we stopped here and we were at Gharib al-Hadith, so we'll continue from here inshallah. Now, Gharib al-Hadith is a very important science from the sciences of hadith. Gharib al-Hadith is referring to the hard or the difficult words that are mentioned in hadith. Right? And that's why you'll find books written on this topic. And from the most famous books is an-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith, I think it's called. An-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith by, I think it's Ibn al-Athir. And basically what this book is basically a dictionary for hadith. It's basically a dictionary for hadith. Any difficult word that you come across in hadith, you want to know what the meaning of the word is, you just go to that book and explain it. Right? Now obviously when we translate it into English, the importance of this science is kind of lost, because even if the word is one of the most difficult and rarest words in Arabic, the translation is going to use an easy word that everyone understands anyway. So in English you might think, oh, we don't need it, but the reality is that when you're studying the book in in Arabic, you need it without a doubt. And the person who is translating the hadith, he has to know what it means in Arabic before he translates it. And then once it's translated, if it's translated correctly, then alhamdulillah. So there are a few words here, and I put these words here because some of the references that I was using mentioned these words, but obviously for an English-speaking audience, they're not as important. But maybe if somebody's memorizing hadith and he wants to know what the Arabic words mean, then it can benefit him. So the first word it says here, al-a'mal. Al-a'mal are basically actions. Yeah, innama al-a'malu. So a'mal is actions, but we're going to talk in a bit more detail exactly what type of actions is this hadith referring to in a short while, inshallah. Then it says an-niyah. Now an-niyah, again we're going to go into detail regarding its meaning, but niyah is intention. Niyah is intention. And that's a very important word for everyone to know, because it's a word that many times will be mentioned, but may not necessarily have its translation mentioned with it. So somebody might be giving a speech or a lecture, and he'll just say niyah. Just like we say masjid, we don't say mosque. Right? But everyone understands what a masjid is. Likewise, there are certain words that every person should know what they mean in Arabic. From them is niyah. And the plural of niyah is niyat. The plural of niyah is niyat. Hence the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Then we have hijrah. Hijrah is migration. Again, this is from those words that everyone should know. A lot of the time, the topic of hijrah is discussed, and it's not always translated, so it's important to know what hijrah means. And we'll talk about the details of it shortly as well, inshallah. يُصِيبُهَا means to attain. To attain or to gain something. That's why in the hadith, وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِدُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا. Whoever's migration was for the worldly life, يُصِيبُهَا, to gain a benefit from it. Yeah? And then يَنْكِحُهَا is from the word nikah, which means to marry. Okay? أو امرأة ينكحها, or a woman that he wants to marry. So, from the word nikah. Okay, then we move on to the general meaning of this hadith. Al-ma'na al-ijmali, the general meaning of this hadith. This hadith is a foundational hadith in the chapter of intentions. You know, every single hadith in this book is a foundational principle for foundational hadith in one chapter of Islam. So I'll try to mention which chapter that is. And some of them are quite straightforward, but some of them require it to be mentioned. So this hadith is a foundational principle when it comes to intentions. And this hadith explains that actions are in need of intentions. Actions are in need of intentions. And likewise, the acceptance and the reward of the action is dependent upon the intention. And likewise, the acceptance or the reward of that action is dependent upon the intention. And inshallah, we're going to go into a bit more detail regarding which actions exactly require intentions, which ones don't, which ones require them for them to be accepted, which don't, which require them not for acceptance but just for reward, and so on. And what are exceptions, what actions don't need intentions. We'll explain all of that shortly, inshallah. Now, after going through these introductory points, we now come to the main part of the explanation of the hadith, which, as you can see on the next page number 127. Right. Sharh Jumal al-Hadith, explaining the sentences of hadith. It says here in your worksheets, for this hadith, before explaining its sentences, it is important to go through an introduction regarding intentions. So what I've done specifically for this hadith, which I won't always do, but because the topic of intentions is such a great topic, and as Imam Shafi'i said, it's a third of knowledge, and it enters into 70 chapters of fiqh. Therefore, we're going to start with an introduction regarding intentions itself. What are intentions, definition of intentions, the ruling of intentions, what's the place of intention, and all these other rulings pertaining to intentions. Now, I could have added this within the hadith, but then I didn't want to make it too complicated, so I've just made it a separate introduction. Once we've gone through that introduction, we will then go through the actual hadith itself, bi-idhnillah. So, the first question is, what is a linguistic definition of niyyah, of intention? The word niyyah linguistically refers to al-qasdu wal-azm, to intend something and to have determination upon that. So it means linguistically intention and determination. So for example, if a person wants to go hajj, the word hajj, the ulama say that linguistically also means qasd, to intend. Why? Because they given the definition of it in the books of fiqh, qasdu makkah, that you intend to go to Makkah. So when you want to go for hajj, you have that determination from when you leave the house that you're going to go to Makkah. And likewise, a dua that some of the Arabs sometimes would say is nawak Allahu bi khair. Nawak Allahu bi khair. May Allah intend good for you. Okay, or may Allah want good for you. Nawak Allahu bi khair. So this is the linguistic meaning of the word. What is the technical definition of the word niyyah? It is, as Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah says. Now, if I quote Ibn Uthaymin, majority of the time it's from his explanation of the 40 hadith. So if anyone does want, a separate, I did mention some explanations a couple of lessons ago. If anybody does want one explanation to go back to read of the scholars, then read Ibn Uthaymeen's, rahimahullah, read his, and it's translated into English as well. It should be something along the lines of explanation of 40 hadith by Imam Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah. I did see one copy of a white cover. It's a good print. Anyways, he says within the obviously I'm using the Arabic. So if I translate something and it's slightly different in the book, then that goes back to the translation. Huh? Anyways, he says al-azmu ala fi'l al-ibadati taqarruban ila Allah. Islamically, intention is to have determination upon completing an act of worship, seeking nearness to Allah. Having determination upon completing an act of worship, seeking closeness to Allah. So when we talk about rectifying your niyyah, a person should have a good niyyah. What does it mean? It means that you have the intention of doing the act of worship only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to get closer to Him through that. Now that's like a general meaning. However, the more important question is the next question. What are the usages of the word niyyah? Now, we're giving you a general definition, but what's more important to correctly understand the word niyyah and how it is used is this next question. What are the usages of the word niyyah? Because this word niyyah can have different meanings depending on the context that it is used. And likewise, the scholars use the word niyyah with different meanings depending on the context that they are using. So the first one that you'll write in the left box is the meaning according to the fuqaha, according to the jurists, or the scholars of fiqh. According to the fuqaha, the jurists or the scholars of fiqh. Now the scholars of fiqh, what is fiqh? Fiqh is the practical rulings. How to pray salah, zakah, fast, hajj, buying and selling, nikah, talaq, criminal law, and so on. That's fiqh. So you can see they are busy with what? Giving a ruling upon these practical actions that you are doing. So therefore, when they use the word niyyah, they have two intentions or two usages when it comes to the word niyyah. The first, تمييز العبادات عن العادات, differentiating acts of worship from customary actions. Differentiating acts of worship from customary actions. You're going to write that in the first box at the bottom. Yeah? Differentiating acts of worship from customary actions. And the second meaning is تمييز العبادات بعضها عن بعض. Differentiating acts of worship from other acts of worship. Differentiating acts of worship from other acts of worship. تمييز العبادات بعضها عن بعض. Differentiating acts of worship from other acts of worship. And we'll explain what they mean, but the two that you should have written down is the first, تمييز العبادات عن العادات, differentiating acts of worship from customary actions or normal actions. And تمييز العبادات بعضها عن بعض, differentiating acts of worship from other acts of worship. Now what does that mean? We'll go through each of them. When we are talking about the first one, which is تمييز العبادات عن العادات, then this is differentiating acts of worship from customary actions. Meaning, you may do a certain action, but what causes that action to be an act of worship is your intention. Right? For example, somebody has a shower. Somebody goes, he has a shower. Is he rewarded for that shower? No, he's just having a shower. Maybe he might get rewarded. No, actually, no. If he just goes without any intention, he's not rewarded. It's just an act, a permissible action. However, if he has a certain intention, then he could get rewarded. So if he has an intention to clean myself, because a Muslim should be clean, He'll get rewarded for that, inshallah. If he has the intention that it's a day of Friday, so it's sunnah to have a ghusl, he will be rewarded more for that. If he has the intention that this is a ghusl from janabah, a state of major ritual impurity, so he needs to have a ghusl, then he is rewarded for that action. Now, in all these different scenarios, the action is the same. He's having the same exact shower, same water, same shower, everything's the same. The only difference is what? His intention. And that intention has what? Changed the ruling of the action from a normal act that he would do, a customary act, to an act of worship. Another example is eating food. A person could eat food just because he enjoys eating food. But then, as Mu'adh radiallahu anhu used to say, أحتسب نومتي كما أحتسب قومتي. That I have an intention for my sleep just as I have an intention for my food. Meaning, when I eat food, my intention is that this gives me energy so that I can worship Allah. Likewise, when I sleep so that I have the intention, I wake up fresh and I can pray and I can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In both scenarios, if a person just eats because he is hungry or he sleeps because he is tired, right, that's an action, there's no sin upon him, but likewise there's no reward. But if a person has the intention that he's doing it so that he can give energy to worship Allah, then he'll be rewarded. And this, some ulama consider it fiqh niyat. This is the fiqh of intentions. Or they call it tijaratu an-niyah, the business of intentions. Why? Because it requires a person, it's like a business transaction. You could do the same action, but now a good businessman, what would he do? He's going to make that profit. So the profit a person would want, the true profit is to have that correct intention so that he is rewarded from the action that he is doing. When he's doing the exact same action, it doesn't require him to do any more specific actions, just requires him to change his intention. And that's why some of the ulama have said, عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات وعادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. So they say عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات. The worship of the people of heedlessness is customary actions. The worship of the people of heedlessness is customary actions. وعادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. And the customary actions of the people of vigilance are acts of worship. And the customary actions of the people of vigilance are acts of worship. What does that mean? عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات. The acts of worship for the people of heedlessness are normal actions. A person prays, but it's become just a habit.
How much reward do you give with the intention?
We'll get to that inshallah. The acts of worship of the heedless people are adat, normal actions. A person prays, but he's only praying because it's a habit. He's not really got intention behind it. It's like, oh, salah time, I need to do what I need to do, and he goes. Right? Is he truly benefiting from the salah? Obviously, he's benefiting in the sense that the obligation is removed from him and so on, but he's not really benefiting from that salah that he should be doing because it's become like a normal act for him. But then on the other side, عادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. Those people of vigilance, those people who are awake, those people who truly understand how to correctly navigate around these different intentions and how to use them, their normal actions are acts of worship. They're eating, they're getting rewarded for it. They're sleeping, they're getting rewarded for it. They're going to work, they're getting rewarded for it because their intention is to look after the family. Right? So that's why we should try ourselves to be from the latter group and not from the former. And that's why Ibn Mubarak rahimahullah, he says, a very powerful statement, رُبَّ عَمَلٍ صَغِيرٍ تُعَظِّمُهُ النِّيَّةِ. Maybe a small action becomes a great action due to the intention. Maybe a small action becomes a great action due to the intention. وَرُبَّ عَمَلٍ كَبِيرٍ تُصَغِّرُهُ النِّيَّةِ. And maybe a great action becomes small due to the intention. So he says maybe a small action becomes great due to the intention, and maybe a great action becomes small due to the intention. So a person could be praying Qiyamul Layl, but if his heart's not there, it's, he's not really going to get that much benefit out of it. In fact, if his intention is corrupt and he's doing it to show off, he's going to gain sin rather than any reward. But then there may be another person who might do a small act of worship. Small act of worship in general. Somebody might give just like £1 in charity. Somebody may say, it's not much, right? But maybe he does that out of full sincerity, wanting the pleasure of Allah, wanting to help the poor in any way, shape that he can, right? So maybe in the sight of Allah, that small action that he did, that we may consider small, is such a great action in the sight of Allah, whereas the other person who's doing a great action, in reality in the sight of Allah, is not that great due to his intention. So this is the first intention. The first meaning of intention, which is differentiating acts or customary actions from worships, or worships from customary actions. And that's why we get the principle. We mentioned two principles, or two statements of the ulama: عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات وعادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. The worship of the people of heedlessness are customary actions, and the customary actions of the people of vigilance are acts of worship. And some ulama have said, النية تجارة العلماء. Niyyah is the business of the scholars. No.
Who said that statement? The heedless people make it.
Ulama have said it. Yeah, but Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned it in his explanation as well. He says, قال بعض أهل العلم. Some of the people of knowledge have said. And the second one was النية تجارة العلماء. The niyyah is the business of the scholars. النية تجارة العلماء. Niyyah is the business of the scholars. The second meaning of the word niyyah, according to the jurists, the scholars of fiqh, تمييز العبادات بعضها عن بعض, differentiating acts of worship from other acts of worship. Now a person comes in the masjid and he prays 4 raka'at. Which salah is he praying? Dhuhr or Isha or Asr. What differentiates? The niyyah, the intention. So the intention differentiates between the different acts of worship. Like the person has a ghusl, he has a shower. Okay, now an act of worship, but it could be a sunnah for Jum'ah, or it could be the obligatory ghusl when he is in a state of janaba. What differentiates between the two? The intention. No. So this is the two usages of the word according to the fuqaha. Then the second usage of the word, which is used and this is used normally in the books of Tazkiyah wa Suluk, the books of talking about the rectification of the hearts. And this is also the usage of the word according to the majority of the Salaf, the majority of the pious predecessors. When they talk about niyyah, they intend this meaning that we are going to mention now. And even some of them have even written books on it as well, like Ibn Abi Dunya. He wrote a book called Kitab al-Niyyah, the book of intention. And that's when he wrote this book, the book of intention. What is he talking about? Is he talking about the meaning according to the fuqaha? No, he's not. He's talking about the meaning that we're going to mention now. And the meaning that we're going to mention now is تمييز المقصود بالعمل, differentiating between the objective of the action. The objective of the action. Now what do we mean by the objective of the action? The first meaning with the fuqaha is talking about the action itself. The second meaning is basically, who are you doing the action for? Who are you doing the action for? And this is when we talk about sincerity. When we talk about niyyah and the link with the niyyah with ikhlas, sincerity, then it's the second meaning that is used. And this is the meaning, like I said, that comes many of the speech of the Salaf, and even in many ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ as well. And towards the end of today's lesson, we're going to mention some of those ahadith where the Prophet ﷺ sometimes praises the intention, sometimes dispraises the intention, and so on. We'll read some of those ahadith. So that's the meaning of the word niyyah. And when we say the conditions of an act of worship to be accepted are two. The conditions for any act of worship to be accepted are two. One of them is al-mutaba'ah, following the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ. The second is ikhlas, sincerity. And this is the meaning that we are talking about. Right? So the intention, but who are you doing that intention for? That's when it comes to ikhlas. A person should do it sincerely only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in short, what are the different usages of the word niyyah? The scholars of fiqh have two usages, either to differentiate customary actions from acts of worship, or to differentiate acts of worship between themselves. Or the usage according to in many of the texts and amongst the Salaf, and in the context of purifying the person's soul and heart and so on, it is who you are doing that action for, i.e. ikhlas, i.e. sincerity. The next issue on the next page is what is the ruling on the niyyah? Meaning, do we have to have intention? Do we have to have a niyyah? What's the ruling? Or is it something good to have it? Ibn Rushd, rahimahullah, in his book Bidayat al-Mujtahid, Ibn Rushd, in his book Bidayat al-Mujtahid, which is a book in comparative fiqh. It's a book in comparative fiqh, and that's the fiqh book that we studied in Medina University. In fact, the Sharia, we studied it over 4 years. In Bidayat al-Mujtahid, he mentions that all of the jurists agree and concur that niyyah, the intentions, are a condition in acts of worship. The intentions are a condition in acts of worship. There's only a small khilaf which is regarding wudu. There's a small khilaf regarding wudu. The Hanafi say that you don't need an intention for it, but that's a separate issue when we study fiqh, inshallah. But other than that, they all agree that it is a condition in acts of worship. Except for, like we said, some of the Hanafis when it comes to wudu, and also some of the Shafi'iyya, they don't call it a condition, they call it a pillar, they call it a rukn. Some of the Shafi'iyya call it a rukn instead of calling it a shart, instead of calling it a condition. Yeah? The reason for wudu is because they say it's not ibadah mahdah, it's not a pure act of worship. Meaning, you do wudu for salah, you don't do wudu for the act of wudu in of itself. So therefore, as long as you wash those body parts, right, it's fine. Because it's like removing najasa, right? You've got impurities on your clothes. Do you need intention to take it off? You don't. Unless you got impurities, you put it in the washing basket, your mom doesn't know, she washes it. She washes it, she doesn't know there's najasa on it. Can you pray in that thobe? Can you pray in those clothes? You can. So they say likewise, wudu is similar to that, therefore it doesn't require an intention. But inshallah, we study all this when we study fiqh, inshallah, and go into the khilaf and so on.
So you know we said about the Imam Shafi'i, did he say that about the same thing about the rukn, about wudu?
No, he didn't say about wudu. Some of the Shafi'iyya, or in fact majority of the Shafi'iyya, they separate issue, nothing to do with wudu. They don't call it a condition, they call it a pillar. They call having a niyyah for an act of worship, they call it a pillar. And the reason for that is because niyyah, a condition normally is before. Right? You do wudu before, you face the qibla before. But with niyyah, it continues as well throughout the salah. Right? You have to, if you start showing off halfway through, you don't have the intention anymore. So they call it a pillar, but that's, it's not a big issue. Right. Now we've got a question here. Obviously, by the way, we talked about acts of worship. What about normal actions? Do they require intention? What do you think?
The customary
Customary ones? No, they don't need intention. You go to the shops, you don't need intention. You just go, right? But if you want to get rewarded, not good. If you want to get rewarded, you have to have the intention. Right? But inshallah, we're going to get to that shortly as well. Right, the next question is, which actions do not require a niyyah? Which actions do not require a niyyah? The first, it says, at-turuk. At-turuk. What are at-turuk? At-turuk are those actions which you are commanded to leave off. Taraka means to leave off. They do not need an intention. So for example, do you have to have the intention to stay away from, I'm not listening to music? No, you just don't do it. You're not going to be sinful for that. So you don't need an intention. Likewise, the example of the najasa that I just mentioned to you. So we have been commanded to stay away from impurities. So do we have to have an intention to always stay away from them? Or if you wanted to clean, do we have to have an intention to clean it? No, because we're commanded to not have it in the first place. So if it's clean by itself, then we do not need an intention for that. So an example of this is the removal of najasat, impurities. That if it is removed without intention, it's accepted. It is accepted. The second is at-talaq. So at-talaq, I'm giving a divorce if you used a clear-cut word. If a clear-cut word is used. Meaning, if a person says to his wife, you are divorced, that's clear. Right? We don't say, look, what's your intention? No, that's clear. It's divorce, khalas. The divorce is made. If he was to say something which isn't clear, then we would ask him, what is your intention? If he was to say, go back to your mother's house, or something like that, which he could be intending a divorce, or he could be intending something else, only then we'll ask, okay, what was your intention? If he said my intention was a divorce, then it's a divorce. If his intention was not a divorce, then it's not a divorce. But if he clearly says, I'm divorcing you, or I'm giving you one divorce, then we don't look at the intention of a person then, because it's a clear word. Right? And this is about ijma'. Al-Qarafi says, أجمعوا على أن صريح الطلاق لا يفتقر إلى نية. They have all concurred and agreed that the clear-cut talaq does not need a intention.
Who said ijma'?
Al-Qarafi. The third is ترك المحظور وفعل المباح. Leaving off impermissible actions and doing permissible actions. Leaving off impermissible actions and doing permissible actions. Right. These do not require an intention. Okay, as we explained before, for you to stay away from something which is haram, you don't need an intention. Right now we're all staying away from, let's say no one's listening to music right now. Inshallah no one's got hidden headphones or something. Right? So you don't need an intention for that. Khalas, you're not listening, you get on with life. Likewise, if you're doing a permissible act of worship, you're eating or anything like that, it does not require an intention. However, if you want to get rewarded, then it does. In both scenarios. So we're talking about here firstly the acceptance of it. It doesn't require an intention. But if we're talking about reward, then it does require an intention. So for example, I explained, you're eating, you want reward for that, you had the correct intention. Staying away from haram, you have to have the intention. Okay, so for example, a woman's calling you for zina. At this time, you have the intention, you say no, right, you get rewarded for it then. Okay, somebody puts on music and you actively turn it off or turn away, put something else in your ear or wherever it may be, then you get rewarded because now you had the intention. Does that make sense? So that's why when it comes to acts of worship, the intention corrects the worship or makes it something which is acceptable. As for when it comes to other actions, then it's not to do with acceptance, but it's to do with reward. And that's why we have a principle over here, which is a sub-principle when it comes to this hadith. لا ثواب إلا بنية. That there is no reward except with the intention. There is no reward except with the intention. So this is general, right? Whether it's act of worship or whether it's any other action, a permissible action, or staying away from haram, you won't get rewarded for any of it unless there's an intention. But when it comes to acts of worship, then for the action to be accepted in the first place, you have to have the intention. As for the other actions, then for the acceptance, there's nothing to do with the intention. But if you want to get rewarded, then you need the intention. Hopefully that makes sense, inshallah. Yeah? Okay, next question. What is the time of the niyyah? Meaning, when do you make the intention? When do you make the intention? The asl is that the intention is done at the beginning of the action. The niyyah is made at the beginning of the action. Okay, this is the asl. Whether it's an act of worship or whether it's something else. However, it is important to understand that the following issues regarding the time. The first issue is there's two types of intentions: an-niyyah al-haqiqiyyah, the actual or the true intention, or secondly, an-niyyah al-hukmiyyah, that which takes the ruling of the niyyah, that which takes the ruling of the intention. Okay, what's the difference? The real or the actual intention is, you're about to say Allahu Akbar, right? For salah, you have the intention. Okay, we don't say Allah, we're going to get to that issue anyway. But you have the intention that I'm praying for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Dhuhr salah and Allahu Akbar. You have that intention inside you, okay? But the second type, where it's the ruling of the intention, is, let's say, just before salah, you're doing wudu. Now that time, you're doing wudu, why? Because you have the intention, I'm praying salah. But when it comes to the salah time, maybe you're thinking about something else, daydreaming, whatever the case may be. So now that you started the salah, have you got that intention? The actual intention is not there because you're thinking about something else. But we say this is an-niyyah al-hukmiyyah. It's given the ruling of the intention. Right. Then we have a question now. Is an-niyyah al-hukmiyyah, that which is considered being given the ruling of intention, is that accepted? The majority of the ulama from the Hanafiyyah and the Malikiyyah and the Hanabila, the Hanafiyyah, the Malikiyyah and the Hanabila, they accept it in general.
What's the difference of the intention?
Huh?
What's the difference of the intention? You said, when do you make the intention?
So when you make the intention, so Salah's, what time Salah? Salah's at, what time is it? 8:45. So at 8:45, Hafiz Sahib says Allahu Akbar, you have the intention to pray and you start your Salah. But the second scenario is 10 minutes before that or 5 minutes before that you're doing wudu. Right? So you have the intention, right? I need to pray, so I need to do wudu. Salah time starts and there's a football game going on. There's a derby going on. There's derby on today, right? Somebody was saying. Right. So you're thinking about that. Hafsab said Allahu Akbar, but you've done it, but your mind's thinking about who's playing. Arsenal and Tottenham. Okay. You're thinking about Arsenal and Tottenham. At the time of Salah, are you thinking about Salah? You're thinking about football. Right? So that's the second type. You don't have the actual intention. So now we're talking about what's the ruling on that? Is that something which is accepted? Is your Salah then accepted or not? We said the majority of the ulama, the Hanafiyyah, the Malikiyyah and the Hanabila, they accept it. They say it's correct. As long as it's only a small difference between the actual intention and the Salah. They do differ exactly what's that small difference, what's considered a small difference. Okay? I believe the Hanafiya, they say as long as there's not a fasil, there's not something that's happening between. Like you've done wudu, then you've had a long conversation with somebody. Okay? And then the Hanabila say as long as it's considered a small amount of time, urfan, according to the customs of the people. Anyways, these are details that you don't need to go into. But generally, they say that it's accepted, as long as it's a small time period. Whereas the Shafi'iyya, they say no. They say no, the intention has to be at the beginning of the salah. What seems to be correct is the first opinion. That the act of worship is accepted. Yeah, because you have the intention. You're saying Allahu Akbar, and you're saying Subhanakallahumma, then you're saying Surah Al-Fatiha. It shows that you intended to pray salah. Right? No one just does that without an intention. Right? Yeah.
What happens if your intention differs during your salah?
We're going to get to that. It's going to come. There is one exception though to this. There's one exception to this regarding the intention, having the intention in the beginning of the action. And that is fasting. And that is fasting. Fasting, you don't have to have the intention at suhoor time. If you have the intention at night, it's fine. Right? Because of the difficulty having the intention at that time all the time, right? So let's say, somebody sleeps after after Isha, and let's just say he wakes up a bit late, and he wakes up after Fajr time has started. Right? Right, is he fasting or not? No, he's fasting. Because when he slept, he's got the intention that I need to wake up and have suhoor and to fast, but he just woke up late. But even though his intention was made at night, and not at the time of when the day of fasting started, it's accepted due to the difficulty of that. And when it comes to nafal, the supplementary or the recommended fast that we do, then the matter is a lot easier. You can have the intention any time during the day. So let's say, and that's what happened with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he came home and asked Aisha radiallahu anha, is there anything to eat at home? And she said, basically, no, there isn't. So the Prophet said, it's okay, I'm fasting. So the Prophet during the day made the intention. So for example, let's say today, obviously the condition of this is that you've not done anything which would break your fast. So you've not eaten already, right? So let's say you just woken up and you've just had a busy day, and it comes to about 3-4 o'clock, and you've not eaten, and Maghrib's in a couple of hours. So if you want to make the intention that, okay, I'll just fast for the rest of the day, that fast is accepted, and it's permissible and it is accepted. Obviously the reward won't be the same as somebody who started the fast from the beginning of the day, but it's still accepted from you, bi'idhnillah. And that's the opinion of the majority of the scholars, except for the Malikiyah. The Malikiyah don't agree, but the majority of the scholars say that. The second issue is it's obligatory to have this intention at the beginning, upon the explanation that we just gave. But what's the ruling on constantly remembering that intention during the act of worship? What's the ruling on constantly remembering that intention during the act of worship? It is mustahab, recommended. What does that mean? When you say Allahu Akbar, that you constantly remember that you are praying to Allah, right? That's not obligatory. That's too difficult. All of us, we don't have that much khushu' in our salah. But it's recommended, and the more the person does it, the better it is that he constantly remembers that he's praying to Allah and standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third issue is what negates a person's intention.
For example, if someone prays, let's say they pray 4 rakat before Dhuhr, they intend to pray 4 rakat, and then they change it in the salah, they want to pray 2 rakat instead because they want to shorten it. Is that permissible?
It's permissible. The third is what negates a person's intention. There are two things. Niyatul qata', when a person has a firm intention that he has broken that intention in some issues. So not in every single act of worship, but in some acts of worship. So for example, if a person, he's praying salah, and during the salah he makes firm intention I'm not praying anymore, I'm breaking my salah. Okay? Khas is broken. As soon as he intends that, it's broken. Right? You can't just say, I'm breaking my salah, and then, a few seconds later, actually I might as well just finish off. Like, it's already broken now. Khas. It's broken. Likewise with Iman. Person can't just say, yeah, I don't believe in Allah. Khas. As soon as he does that, it's kafir. Okay? Then he has to come back into Islam. Likewise in Ihram as well. All four mazahib says that person's I leave that issue with Ihram because he has a few more technical issues with it. Okay, that's the first. The second is at-taraddud fi niyyah, having a doubt in your intention. And again, in certain issues, i.e. not in every single act of worship. What does it mean by taraddud? So you're praying salah and now you think, shall I break my salah, shall I not? So you've not made the intention that I'm breaking it, you're debating. Right? Now in here there's some khilaf, there's difference of opinion. Right? So the Shafi'i and Hanabila say, yeah, the salah is broken. But then the Maliki and Hanafiya say that it's not broken. So there's khilaf. And likewise, in fasting there's some khilaf as well. The third